Welcome to IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Don.
Coming at you live from San Francisco, California.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Hi, and welcome to another fantastic episode here on IT Pro TV. We are right in the middle of a customer service skills for Techie series, and I'm your host, Joe Peacock, and we're going to carry on with this. And in fact, we're carrying on with a part 3. I think I'm being nodded at here right now, yeah, because I'm being nodded at by the absolutely amazing and wonderful Wes Bryant, who, of course, is back in the studio with me today.
It's computing the trilogy.
Ooh,
I think that's what
that.
it is, or it's just the fact that I didn't time it right. We'll figure it out. I think it's the trilogy.
I like the trilogy
You like
bit.
the trilogy?
Otherwise, I'm going to have to start complaining at you about timing.
That's right. So good thing it's a communication show, not timing show, for sure. That's right. We are back, as Miss Joe is let everybody know. We talked a little bit about basics in computing, right? We've been talking about things like, for instance, what do we do with our computers, right? Why do we even use computers today? And it's important. We've talked about, producing work, right? We've talked about things like just a basic, calculations. Taking our data,
Data,
and doing things to it, right? This is going to be a fun episode. So one of the things that we also wanted to talk about is data storage.
Data
Storage, right? So when it comes down to data storage, right, that is another important part of computing. Why? Well, it's all about our information, right? Think about the term IT, information technology. Right? So this is technology all centered around your data. All right? Got both, right? So it is important to understand a little bit about storage. Let's go ahead and take a look at my slide here. Now, we're going to talk more about our data coming up in some episodes, but we just kind of want to set the foundation so that makes a little bit more sense as we get there. All right? When it comes to storing your information, if you are supporting somebody, it is important to know where that information is being stored, right? One of the things I have here is something you see there on the slide, right? We got a hard drive. Now, hard drives are kind of like our filing cabinets, if you will. That's the box, that's the container that we put all of our information in. Where is that box? Where is that storage cabinet, if you will, located? Well, it could be located right here internally in my computer. All right? Now, if you're supporting somebody that the information is internal to their computer, that's going to be a lot different than if we have one of these devices and it's out there somewhere on our company network. And it's in our middle icon here, what we call a server. Don't let that term fool you, ladies and gentlemen. A server is just a fancy term for a glorified computer that provides you some kind of service within your company. That's all a server is. And there's many different services, way too many to go into them in here. All right, but just understand that in this case, what we're talking about is this little thing that's in that glorified computer. It's over there on the network, and when I save my information, it's saved there. Because if a customer comes to us and says, I'm missing my files, right? That's one of our problems that we have to, not a problem, incidents that we have to address, right? We have to find out, well, is it on your computer? Is it on a computer somewhere else? Or if we look at the last one's interesting, and this is one where it gets a little confusing. Or is it in the cloud? All right. We're going to show you what the Wizard of Oz, who he actually is. All right. Because the difference between putting our information on one of these devices in our computer, putting one of these information on one of these devices on our company network is a little bit different. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our information. We'll just say that this is our electronic media. And what I'm going to do, Joe, you help me out here? Joe has a device. Go ahead. It's okay. It'll be all right. She's got one of these things on a server in her network. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, Joe, I need you to hold my information on this device. Oh, see? SLA. Oh, aha. I got to get out my wallet.
Yeah,
right?
Come on.
And I've got to say, all right, I'll give you some money.
Now
you take my information, you put it there, and you take care of it. Now, she's actually going to pocket that money. So this episode just cost you $10. All right, now, and that's U.S. money here. I'm not sure exactly where it would be elsewhere.
That's probably around about $6.50 £57
Okay.
pounds.
All right, very good, perfect.
It'll buy us a couple of coffees, though.
Oh, very good, good. Is that going to be coffee with you and I?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
good.
good.
Coffee's on me later.
Perfect. Absolutely. That's great. So that really just kind of demystifies everything about the cloud, right? So what does it mean? All right. We hold our stuff in our computer or on our networks. Thank you very much. On our networks, or we store our stuff still on these devices. Storage is storage. It doesn't matter where it's located. At some point, it's going to end up on one of these devices. And in the third data storage is the cloud where we send it. In this case, let's say Joe is what we call an IS or a cloud service provider, right? That is a fancy, complex term. It can be simplified. That just means Joe has built her own network. She's got tons of these sitting in one of these back here, and I'm going to hand her money, and she's going to go ahead and she's going to maintain my information.
I want to know, are we going to discuss sort of the advantages and the disadvantages of some of these different types of data storage?
Most definitely, we are. Because there might be a reason as to why would you even want to do that, all right? So let's go ahead and let's take a second. That's a great thing. We'll go ahead and take a second here, right? When we take care of our stuff, how does that benefit us? Well, guess what? You always know where your stuff is. You always have access to it.
Do we?
Do we? Do we always have access to it? Well, when you are the one that's in control of the filing cabinet, we're just going to be theory here. You've got a filing cabinet in your house right now. Right?
I lose keys.
Oh, I lose keys. Oh, absolutely. Let's say this is your electronic filing cabinet, all right?
I've lost the key.
I want you to think about it. You've lost the key. How do you gain access to your information? How do you gain access to the folders and files that are logically or physically arranged inside of that file cabinet?
Baseball bat.
Bet. What's that?
A baseball bat.
Oh, a baseball bat. We know how Joe gets away. She's got plenty of broken file cabinets in her house, right? Now, one of the things that you have to do is you're going to have to find a way into that filing cabinet, right? I think you're alluding to maybe like passwords, right? Maybe where I've got that information stored, I've hopefully got it protected. Joe mentioned that in the last episode, right?
Well, you know what? It's one of the common queries that you get on a service desk is I've been away on holiday or vacation and I've forgotten my password. If it's your password and you've got your data on your PC and you've forgotten your password, guess who can help you?
You.
Well,
maybe not.
Well be nobody. It depends.
Nobody. That's true. That's true.
So it's really important then that you protect your data.
Definitely. And we'll definitely look at some security on our data when we get more into the data side of this, because we want to set the stage basically for where is it located? Because if I'm missing files, I need to know, kind of like Joe said, is this in a filing cabinet that I am the one that basically oversees it? Because if things get lost, guess what? It's up to me to figure out how to fix it.
And I also, I wonder how many people actually back up their own personal computers. I do, but then, I've been in IT for many years, but I wonder how many people do actually back up their own personal computers.
I backed up my personal computer 72 days ago.
Right.
Which
So
means,
you do,
I am not
great.
kidding right now, because every time I log into my machine, it says you have not run. You haven't, excuse me, a little bit better English here. You haven't run your backup. So what does that mean to me? That means that if my data is stored locally, again, just a little file cabinet on my computer, and this computer dies, this filing cabinet dies, it's hardware, right? It's not a matter of if it's going to break, it's just how long before it breaks, right? That's just the way hardware is, a physical device. When we say hardware, something tangibly I can hold, right? However, what happens if we put our information up on that company? In fact, if we go back to the slide, what happens if we put our information, we're storing our information in the middle icon there, that little server, right? Glorified computer, glorified filing cabinet. In this way that you don't store your information locally. That's the term locally. What does that mean? Locally? Well, it depends. I love the it depends, right? Locally, if you're talking about local computer storage, you're talking about the filing cabinet stored within your machine. I said local company network. Now, I used to just say company network, and I didn't have to worry about that. Now I have to say local company network, because what we're talking about is inside of our corporation, managed and maintained are all the devices that allow us to communicate between computers and communicate with this glorified computer, glorified filing cabinet. If the information's stored there and a customer calls you and you need to give them support, You can't give them support based on their local hard drive, their local file cabinet, because that's not where the information resides. All right? But your company still has to maintain it. When that glorified filing cabinet breaks or Joe tries to fix it because, well, she's forgot her password, we need to buy another filing cabinet, right? Well, joking aside, when that file server, that computer fails, your company's got to replace the data, hopefully, like Joe said, backup information. We'll talk about what backups actually mean coming up. All right? So there's trade-offs, right? The trade-off is, yes, I gain access to my information, and if we're talking about policies, procedures, maybe some of you guys have heard the buzzword out there, GDPR, maybe we have to make sure that for compliance regulations, we hold that information and we've got some kind of security standard. All of that lingo, all that jargon just means if that server fails, guess what? You have to restore your data and you have to take care of that failed component. However, the last one here that we have is the cloud. This is the one where I took, hey, let's put our data on Joe's servers, right? And I'm going to pay Joe some money, and she's going to take care and maintain it. All right?
I've still got it.
And yeah, she's
Still mine.
Still got my money, by the way, too. Well, that's where
Once you
we
paid
talk.
it, you don't get a refund.
Oh, no. Once
That's
you pay
not
out.
what the cloud's about.
No, it's not. That's right. Now, we joke around about, hey, I've got your money. Well, no, we adhere to what are known as SLAs. And we talk about SLAs. We've already established what they are. But I've got a service level agreement that says, if I give you my information, right, and you put it on your servers and I pay you money, if that fails, I should have access to my information because I'm paying you, or in this case, Joe, to maintain it. And that first point of contact, like she mentions, you have to understand. It is crucial to understand the location of the user data if you're going to support the users, especially when it comes to missing files.
I know a lot of people get concerned about security in cloud, and I do hear that quite often about, oh, I don't want to leave that to somebody else to manage because it's insecure. But actually, you'll find that it's more secure in as much as you have got resilience built in. So if that particular drive were to fail, where your data is kept, then there is resilience there. There is another drive where your data is mirrored to, but also it's backed up on a regular basis as well. And in fact, and I think that you mentioned on one of your slides, you mentioned Dropbox. Dropbox has a fantastic versioning control that allows you to go back, and I can't remember how many versions it is, but let's just say that you were to make a change on one of your files. You were to make a change on a document, and you suddenly decided that you didn't want that change and you wanted to revert back. Well, guess what? You can with a facility like Dropbox. Or what about when we talk about shared ownership? Remember we had in our last episode, we talked about shared files and the ability to share our data between different people within different work groups and within, maybe even within your family. And certainly it's possible then Wes and I have been sharing something all the way through this particular episode and to our previous episodes, in that we share a PowerPoint presentation. Now, if one of us updates it and the other one doesn't like it, how do we change it back without too much effort? Well, guess what? We go to the cloud, we go to our shared Dropbox, and we say, right, I don't particularly like that version because Wes made a few mistakes. He didn't spell it in English, right? So I'm going to revert back to a previous version. So actually storing your documentation in the cloud is a really good way to ensure versioning control that you may not have been able to implement within your organization or within your particular environment.
Most
just
definitely.
for you.
Yeah, and you gain access to, technologies that you don't have to support, an infrastructure that's behind the scene. And when I say infrastructure, that's technical jargon for all this stuff behind the scenes, right? All of this stuff that we have to support. When we have to support this stuff, one of these devices here could be $120,000. Imagine having to support that, or your company having to support that. And companies do, by all means, right? Well, what about the average end user that works, that lives at home? What, are they left out? Is this they can't gain access to all of this infrastructure? Certainly not going to implement it in their home, right? You don't want to turn on your server closet in your home and then the lights dim 2 blocks over, right? It's not really something that we're going to do.
Well, that's the other thing is you mentioned about the lights dimming 2 blocks over. There's a lot of expense in maintaining something like this. Yes. There's air conditioning, there's electricity, there's a huge amount of expense in that. So again, I'm quite happy to pay $5 a month or $10 a month for somebody to store my data to make sure that it's backed up. And I'm not actually paying those $10 a month to my electricity supplier, which I would have been. Actually, I probably would have been paying a lot more just to keep it cool and to keep it up and running.
Oh, definitely. We can offload that expense and I say offload it, we're not really doing anything. We don't even see it. It's transparent to us, which is another great thing about using the cloud. And again, let me show you what I mean here. So we've got a few different cloud providers, if you will, that we have here. One of the ones that we have is OneDrive, right? That's a common one. And again, we're not going to just go with Microsoft. We're not vendor specific here. This is a vendor neutrality here, but this is one of the main ones inside of a Microsoft and Windows environment. You do not have to have, by the way, a Windows machine in order to support this. I've got OneDrive for Mac. I've got a Mac machine. That's what I use. So you also have that. Mac has iCloud. iCloud's another big one out there, so let's not forget iCloud, right, on the Mac side. You heard Joe mention things like Dropbox, right? Dropbox is another one. If you're not sure what these are, well, Google them, right? Whatever your search engine is. I'm saying Google, put them in your search engine and look for them.
And I also mentioned in a previous episode that a lot of these applications run trial versions, and you see it there now. You'll see there on Dropbox, try it for free. So there is a trial version there that if you don't want to sign up for the full thing, then by all means go to the trial version.
Definitely. So we've got Dropbox. Google Drive is another one. Now, I have to tell you, you have to be careful. If you're like me, I've got files in every single one of these providers, and that can be problematic itself, right? Because you might have to support that user. Well, this week we were using that.
And his bank balance is probably suffering for that as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you say, well, that's easy. I could understand that. I know where the data is. Really? Do you? Let me show you how easy these lines blur. In fact, we're going to go ahead. We've been in the Windows machine. Let's show you from the Mac side, right? I have Finder down here. All right. And in fact, here's the slide that we're using for this set of slides that we're using for these episodes. All right. Now, Joe knows, right? I know that Joe knows. But Joe, can you tell me which of these are actually cloud and which of these are maybe, well, we'll start there. Which one is cloud?
Which one is cloud? It's the one that if you click on, I'm probably going to be very upset by because I don't want you to change it.
No, I won't change the screen.
That's the one that says Dropbox on the top left-hand corner. Yeah.
But applications, downloads, where do you think that resides?
Well, and that's a good question.
Let's say downloads.
To be perfectly honest,
that's a trick question with applications.
Right, these all reside here on your local hard drive. But nevertheless, what you've got on your local hard drive are client versions of those applications. Now, that doesn't mean that the data necessarily sits on your hard drive, because the application could sit on your hard drive, but the data itself could be stored somewhere else, such as a server or the cloud. So the applications, even the downloads, well, that's an application in itself. And what that allows you to do is download an application or download data onto your particular, laptop in this case. But nevertheless, that data is probably going to be downloaded from somewhere, which means that that data is in the cloud.
Most definitely. It gets confusing, right? If you've never seen this. Now, Joe and I, this is the playground ballpark, if you will, that we play our games in. We're here every day, so we realize it, but maybe you don't, right? You can't tell, but believe it or not, the folder there that says Wes Bryan, that's actually in the cloud. However, see how it starts to get tricky? Downloads, like Joe said, if I was to get out of here and we'll just go ahead and minimize that, well, that's actually stored right here on my local Mac drive, right? My Mac OS drive, and I can see, well, I say I can see that. Where'd it go? Oh, there we go. I can see that I have a certain amount of information that is sitting right here on this local machine. And that's what we meant when we said local. It's sitting right on the drive that's in the Mac. All right. And notice that if I look at Finder, it doesn't tell me, hey, Wes, downloads, that's on the local drive here within your machine. And, oh, by the way, Dropbox, it's easy to see that, yeah, Dropbox, we could tell that was the cloud. But what you don't know is Wes Bryan, that's actually in the Dropbox folder. That's the only Dropbox folder I really use in the cloud. So I've made it look like it's another folder right here on my local machine. But it's not storing the information. When you store local information, it is stored locally on the file cabinet, the hard drive within your machine, and you view it locally. When you see information that is stored in the cloud, and again, like Joe said, kind of a catch-22 is where it's actually at, we're just going to say for the most part, what you are doing is connecting to it remotely but viewing it locally, which means I can basically I can open up a web browser and I can see my information. And to me, it looks local, but it's being stored remotely. And that is very, very important to understand when it comes to supporting end users, is to know where that information is actually stored. Again, is it stored in something like iCloud? Is it stored in something like Dropbox? Is it stored in Google Drive? So that's one of the things that we mention here, is just understanding where the information is stored. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about data and how it actually gets stored and alleviate maybe some of the confusion about that. The last couple of things that I want to talk about is entertainment. Now, when it comes to entertainment, this could be a business thing. A lot of times it's going to be a home user environment, the home environment where you have somebody that maybe is connecting to streaming media services through their computer, or maybe that's all they have, right? So the way you support this might be different than the way you support, let's say, if entertainment is the focus of your company and you're doing graphics and media design, right? If somebody calls you and says, hey, I'm having a problem with my computer, and you say, well, what's wrong? You go through your troubleshooting request or whatever your normal response is, and they say they're having trouble with a computer that's a media editing workstation. That's a lot different than somebody calls you and says, hey, I'm trying to stream Netflix to my computer and it's not working, right? So there's a big difference in the type of support, right? In entertainment, or if you're talking about a home environment, you might be supporting the fact that somebody can't stream services, somebody's can't gain access to their music library, if you will, versus somebody that you might be supporting the hardware that's not performing right for media and audio editing stations.
But then we also get into the realm of, you mentioned streaming, but then just a little while ago we were talking about downloads. And so you get into the realm of the difference between a download and streaming. Streaming is watching it actually online. So you're not actually downloading it onto your local PC, whereas downloading, well, means exactly that. Now, some of these streaming services give you the ability to download onto your local device, but others don't. And what the difference between that and the streaming is the fact that if you're downloading, then you can download it and then you can watch it when you don't have internet connection, you don't have any Wi-Fi. Whereas with streaming, you have to be connected whilst you're watching something.
Definitely. So entertainment is a very, very important thing to the home users, right? And the reason I'm differentiating is because, and I've said this before when I'm teaching, students or just viewers, there's a difference in what's important data-wise to a business user versus a home user. And let me tell you why. Joe and I, for the most part, I could almost say with complete confidence, I'd say 99% on my side of this, because I might lose something. I haven't backed my computer up in 72 days. That we could lose our computers right now. What I mean is they all just, we're out of the water, right? And we need to get back into our computers. We need to get access to our data. Well, Joe and I, we don't save anything that's important to us locally on our machines, because we know, we've been in IT long enough, we know that it's not a matter of if something's going to break, it's just how long before it does break, right? Home users don't understand that. Or maybe they do, but they don't know exactly how. This is not talking down to anybody. It's just based on your experience. Home users maybe don't understand that. So if you have a user that can't, let's say, even log into a machine, they forgot their password, and they're completely logged out, and the computer's working just fine, but they've got 20 years of photos of their family that they can never get back. If that machine dies, they can never get back. Can you imagine that? I don't want you to imagine that. That is very important to the home user, where Joe and I might say, oh, well, we keep our pictures in Dropbox. That's okay. Let the computer die, and we'll bring it back, reinstall an operating system or whatever, and we'll just download our videos or download our pictures back, right? We have that comfort because we understand. Realize that the person that's contacting you, you might say, oh, that's not a big deal. No. We've already talked about that. Don't downplay what the end user is going through at that time. Realize that this might be something that's catastrophic to the end user.
And I want to mention that a lot of users, this is really important. This has obviously been through the wash, Wes, but anyway.
I'm in the money laundering business.
But this is obviously really important to some users. And the fact that they're going to have to pay an extra $5 or £5 or £10 per month in order to store their photos off-site, in the cloud, that might be a little bit too much for them. So they might not want to do that. But then in that case, obviously, we want to extol the virtues of backing up to a local remote drive. And in fact, that drive that Wes has got out of my reach right now, so I can't actually get to it. This thing here, we can actually, you know, we can buy these, and you can buy these separately that you attach via a USB cable to your laptop, and you can use those as backup devices. You don't have to back up to the cloud, and that's just a one-off payment. But again, it's something that as a service desk analyst, at some point in time during your career, you are going to speak to somebody who has lost their data, because the backups failed, or because their PC failed, they didn't back up, or they didn't back up to the cloud, or maybe it's something simple that they've lost their password and their hard drive is encrypted. And without that password, they cannot get into anything at all, in which case you can do nothing else but potentially rebuild that PC. You're going to come across that at some point in time throughout your career.
Most definitely. And to an average end user, something like, hey, we have to completely restore your computer from a factory default. That might be something that that is very intrusive and very catastrophic. So never downplay the seriousness of it, especially when it comes from the user's perspective. One of the last things, I know we're just got a few more minutes here. One of the last things I put for you, the viewer that are watching this, because it's one of the important things that we do with computers as well, and I really think that it benefits you guys, and that's the monitoring side. Now, you could say that that's the computational side of what we do, and I do understand that, but I wanted to put monitoring here very basically, because maybe you don't understand what monitoring actually means, all right? Anytime we talk about monitoring, a lot of times what we talk about are things like performance and health monitoring. It's basically the process of just providing an insight into what the current acceptable levels of performance are, right? It could be, for instance, analyzing trends, and what I mean by trends is how is this device, this component been performing over a set specified time? Is it what we expect? Is it below the average of what we expect? I don't know. It's going to be specific to your environment, right?
Well, I want to bring in the difference between monitoring and analysis.
And analysis, sure.
Because monitoring is simply monitoring the performance. Simply that. Whereas analysis is something that we do, and there are analysis tools out there that will actually take that data and then perform the analysis on that data. But as far as monitoring is concerned, you have monitoring on your cell phone.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Every time you get a text message and it tells you that you're getting a text message, that's monitoring. And what it's doing is it's monitoring whether anything's been received to your phone, and then it's sending you what we call an alert. If you remember there's an option on your cell phone to turn alerts on or off. It's sending you an alert to tell you that you've actually received a text message. And that's what monitoring does. Monitoring monitors and then simply sends you an alert.
And would you say
if
the
there's
analysis?
Been an exception.
Would you say the analysis is actually reading the fact that the message is there?
The analysis is actually, now I've noticed with, and I use Apple, in fact, you can see we both use Apple,
sure.
But I've noticed that now Apple has started doing analysis for you as well, because they send you a message now every week to tell you how much screen time you've had. In other words, you've been on this phone way too long. So, yeah, there's analysis that's now, again, coming into our day-to-day environment. But we use monitoring things like our home security cameras. We've got monitoring set up on those. We've got monitoring systems set up that record every time somebody logs in and every time somebody logs out of the network and every time somebody performs a backup. And we've got monitoring systems that do that, and also systems that perform the analysis that tells us when something is working not quite the way that we expected it to work.
Yeah, most definitely. And again, let's show you something that you have right here in your Mac that maybe you weren't aware of. If I do the Spotlight search, and I believe that's just a command space bar here, and I just type activity. I could just act T, and it understands what I'm talking about. Notice the activity monitor, and if I launch that, what that essentially is going to do is give me some kind of insight, right, as to what the current performance levels of this computer is. Now, this is just strictly the monitoring side of it right here, right now. And I could see these are commonly the major things. Energy.
And we can do this in Windows Task
Manager. And you can do this in
well.
Windows, and we'll show you here in a second. Notice that we've got categories, some of the major categories. We'll talk about some of the jargon that I'm going to throw at. CPU, processor, brains of the operation, memory. Energy, this is because it's a laptop. If it's a desktop, you might not have the energy in there.
I don't have
You don't have energy in there. And then disk, where are we storing our information and how well is that storage mechanism working? right? And network, right? Our communications, how Joe and my computer, how well is Joe and my computer communicating together? How well is my computer communicating with anything else that's out there past this computer, right? So we can see that information. It isn't specific to Mac, right? So if I switch over to my Windows machine, and I'm going to come down to my search field here, and I'm going to, let's see, scoot that over so you guys can see it. And I'm just going to type Perfmon. I think I'm going to type Perfmon. Perfmon, right? Short for performance monitor. Notice that we've got a performance monitor application here, and it's not loading certain counters working well. It's not, the performance monitor isn't performing that well. So if you notice, we can get things like statistical information, right? And I know it's kind of hard to see, but more specifically, for instance, the processor time. Remember over there on the Mac side, we had that thing called CPU? I said central processing unit. It's the brains of the operation. That's just jargon, right? And that's why jargon isn't so great sometimes, right? Processor means the exact same thing. And I can see the statistical information of how well this is performing or how well it's not performing. And the great thing is, maybe this line graph doesn't mean anything to me. Well, I can actually analyze it in a couple of different ways. Like, for instance, I can change this and say, hey, I just need the raw data. Give me the raw information, right? So we can monitor the performance of a component, right? And there are different components that you potentially monitor. Think about your website. Joe, I know this is really bad for me. How long before, if you're buying something online, how long would you say if that website's slow before you just say, you know what, I'm just going to move on and maybe find a competitor?
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
It really depends on
Sure.
the website, to be honest. But
Right.
I can tell you now that if, a website, if it's going to take longer than, say, 20 seconds,
Yeah,
then
you're
I'll
gonna move
probably
on.
think, you know what, this website's not great. And I'd also be worried about other things like the security of that particular website, if it's taking too long to process. And yet it could actually be my network that's causing the problems. So
Yeah.
again, something else that we're going to take a look at
Yeah.
in another episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to wrap up here, as I know we're coming up on time, just remember that performance monitoring, again, is just monitoring giving you insight and then oversight. Insight to a specific component, oversight to maybe bunch of components that are actually the reason that certain issues are happening. Applications, websites, devices, support. They're going to even monitor you as well, right?
Oh, well, we like to do that.
Yeah, most definitely. So, Joe, I think that is it. When we come back in our next episode, we'll be diving in a little bit more to our data.
Oh, excellent. And he even said it with the right accent as well. So, I'm going to be quite pleased by this one. So, yeah, as Wes says, join us in our next episode where we're going to be taking a lot deeper dive into the world of data and what data means to you, but more importantly, what data means to your users. But you've been watching Customer Service Skills for Techies, and I've been your host, Joe Peacock.
And I'm Wes Bryan.
And we want you to join us in our next episode.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.